Welcome back to Squawk Box. New this morning, a report breathtaking in so many ways. I imagine it will be the talk of the town, at least on Wall Street and elsewhere. The Wall Street Journal now reporting that Donald Trump's allies are quietly drafting proposals that would attempt to erode the Federal Reserve's independence. The former president wins a second term. A small group of Trump's allies are now arguing that he should be consulted on interest rate decisions, that Fed regulation should be subject to the White House review, and that the president should be more forcefully be able to use the Treasury Department as a check on the central bank. The group also argues that if Trump wins a second term, he should have the authority to oust Fed Chair Jay Powell before his term ends in 2026. The Journal saying it wasn't clear if Trump was aware of the proposals and that the work was so secretive that some prominent former Trump economic aides weren't aware of it. A spokesperson for Trump's campaign saying if it's not coming from us, don't take it as official, but not denying it either. I have to say, I mean, just as somebody who lives in this world, I think if you're in the world of finance and you think that the president is going to do this explicitly, look, there's always been some level of implicit pressure points and things, and we heard Trump, even publicly, make comments about the Fed.
H.W. Bush made comments about the Fed.
I remember talking to Paul Volcker before he passed away, and he talked about conversations he had with James Baker on behalf of Reagan back in the day. But I just want to read this to you because this is very, very different. Some of the former president's advisors have discussed requiring that candidates for the Fed chair privately agree to consult informally with Trump on the central bank's decisions. Others have made the case that Trump himself could sit on the Fed board of governors on an acting basis, an option that several people close to the former president described as far-fetched. But nonetheless, I mean, I just, for those in the finance world who sort of said, okay, I like the tax policies, or I'm okay with this, or I like this or this about this is different.
Yeah,
if the Federal Reserve is...
There's no names attached to it.
Genuinely not going to be independent.
There's no names attached to it, and the people they did ask said they don't know anything about it and don't even take it seriously. I'd like to know who are the people? Peter Navarro? I mean, or not to disparage him, but... Yeah, I don't know about the sources, but which allies of Trump, if Trump doesn't even know about it, which it says there, he may or may not.
Well, we don't know. And
that's what I'm saying. So, but who is this? I mean, how crazy and what constitutes an ally versus a confidant and someone that actually would be policy making?
Can we all just say we think it's a crazy situation to have the idea of a president? To have a president sitting on a board like that.
More about the...
It's crazy and it's insane. I don't know who the allies are. I imagine, look, it's running the top of the Wall Street Journal's website right now.
Right.
They're citing multiple people who they claim are close to the president. I do believe there are people close to the president who have views that may be like this, that I wouldn't dispute. I think you wouldn't dispute that either.
I know a couple.
You know a couple. And he surrounded himself with a whole bunch of people. By the way, a story like this, to me, unto itself undermines the credibility of a future Fed under President Trump. And the truth is that it makes it, I would imagine, it would make it harder to find a credible individual to run the Federal Reserve, because invariably, now that this story has been published, and the president, by the way, hasn't said this is absolutely crazy, we do not agree with this at all, which the spokesperson did not do.
Right.
Let's say you name your next Federal Reserve chair. What is the first question that everybody at this table and everybody on Wall Street is going to be asking?
Are you independent? Do you have
Are
to
you
consult
independent?
with,
Have you made a secret? Have you made a secret deal with the president? We're aware that his allies are working on a secret deal with you.
I don't think I would ask it that way. I think I would probably say, did you have any agreement with the president beforehand that you would consult with him before any?
But my point is,
because otherwise you can say, no, I didn't have a secret deal.
But I'm saying
20 people knew
the public is going to sit around, as we are right this second, and say that there's something untoward going on here.
After what happened to Jay Powell, all through the first Trump, no, God forbid, but all through Trump's administration, who would want the job anyway, given the daily tongue lashing that poor Jay Powell got?
I think we know a bunch of people who would like the
right, but
job.
They would be taking it, eyes wide open to what to expect from what we saw with the jawboning for almost daily on Jay Powell.
You mean forget about a private coercion.
We already saw how just coercion. Relentless as a real estate guy Trump was about lower rates. I mean, you could have, I don't know if there's any scenario And most presidents are like that. They want lower rates because they want to have a strong economy.
Sure. I'm just
but
saying
he was more outspoken than anyone
else. This very
else.
Concept, though, that there are people that are close to the president, the former president, talking about these things and want to approach it in such a coordinated way, undermines the credibility of whoever that person would be if they were to ever get that job. Just by default. By default, you're going to look at that person and you're going to say, are you a puppet of this president?
You would need to see more about this, actually, the veracity of it actually being a serious proposal and who we're talking about that's proposing it before your hair totally is gone from being on fire. I would just want to know, is it really a possibility? I mean, think of the people that advised Trump on other matters. And
correct. Yes.
Right. Well,
that's why my hair's on fire.
Right.
My hair's on fire for a reason.
Giuliani.
They could be crazy. Like Jason Miller.
Look at the people around him.
Right.
If that's not saying something to you, I don't know what is. That's the point.
That's saying something to me.
That's the point.
But yeah, okay. The people advising the current guy on myriad subjects. I don't have any hair either.
Well, you look like you're doing pretty well up there. So,
well, I'd pay a lot for that. But but a conflicted Fed, it worries me more than a conflicted Justice Department.
Both worry me, and if you look at the inflationary prospects, that would be the concern of a
weaponized
Justice Department.
Yeah, Justice Department.
Have you not seen the Supreme Court? Call me and let me know what you're thinking.
What have they done that you don't like?
It was the questioning yesterday that people are talking about with the new thing. We'll see.